Greetings, Bat Family, and welcome back to Holy BatCast, brought to you by Real Fans for Real Movies. Make sure you visit our website, holybatcast.com, or find us all over social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. Just search for Holy BatCast, you'll find us. If you love the show and you want to help support us, you can do that on Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/holybatcast. You don't have to do it, but if you do it, just know that it is appreciated and it makes our lives easier. And I got to give a shout out to Mr. Andrew Antes. I'm sorry, Andrew. I don't know how to say your last name. Andrew Antes. He upped his pledge, which was so sweet, so unnecessary, but so appreciated. So, Andrew, you're awesome. Much appreciated. This one goes out to you and all our patrons. You guys rock. We are part of the Real Fans Podcast Network. You can check out all those shows at rf4rm.com. And as always, I'm your Bat host, Andy DiGenova. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd. It's just my name, Andy DiGenova. I did take last week off, but it's been a busy week. Lots been going on, so there's a lot to talk about. We are going to catch up on the news. What's happening over at WB Discovery WB. I still get it wrong. I don't know. I think it's Discovery Warner Brothers. Anyway, we're going to talk about all that stuff. The good, the bad, in between. And joining me for that is someone you have not heard on this show in a while, and that's a crime, and I feel bad about it. But you know how podcasting goes and schedules and blah, blah, blah. So it's been a minute. It's been far too long, but it's always good to have him back. It's my pal, Mr. Sean Gerber. Hey, Sean, welcome back.
Thank you, Andy. It is so good to be back. And yeah, it's no crime at all because this is podcasting. I think more than anyone, I can relate to schedules and just how hard that is and, wrangling herding cats or whatever saying people use for that. But I'm so happy to be back. And I was actually just thinking about this being this year being the 10th anniversary of The Dark Knight Rises. And that was the movie that brought me on Holy BatCast the very first time. Not as it was coming out, but what was it, like a year or so?
I think so. Yeah, it was like a year later.
Roughly, yeah. Bringing me on the show to see how I still felt about the movie, because I have been lead counsel in the defense of The Dark Knight Rises for 10 years.
Are you still lead counsel?
I think I have to move down to second chair,
okay.
Or whatever that is, co-counsel. Second chair is music. So yeah, I think I have to bump it down a little bit. I can still vehemently defend the movie and a lot of it that I love about it, but there were flaws all the way back 10 years ago that I didn't like. And it's funny how that happens over time when you rewatch things. It's the stuff that kind of gnaws at you and just needles just starts digging deeper as you rewatch it. Just, why did they do this when they could have done that? But I still love and adore the movie, and I still consider it a worthy conclusion to just a brilliant Batman trilogy. And so, yeah, I'm still there. I'm still on the defense team for The Dark Knight Rises, for sure.
Yeah, we just did our 10-year Dark Knight Rises commentary, and it's the same thing. I mean, I love it, flaws and all, but I also am not blind to the flaws. And yeah, so it was funny that you brought that up because it is something that has been on our mind because we just revisited it ourselves. But yeah, I think that was the first time you were on Holy BatCast, and I want to say the last time you were was Joker, when you got to see Joker early, probably.
Yeah, I think I did like a non-spoiler review for Holy BatCast on for Joker, and now a sequel is in the works, with a musical sequel with Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, which is just so crazy. That's like, why not? Yeah, it's crazy how things have developed and how things continue to develop. It can always be a frustrating time following DC, but it's never a dull moment following DC and being a fan, depending on how you feel
way of looking at it.
These past few weeks. You can't say you've been bored.
No, but I am exhausted. Does that count?
That's fair. That's
been a lot.
Boredom's. I don't know what's worse, exhaustion or boredom. I mean, because at least exhaustion, you can go take a nap. There's not really. I guess if you're bored enough, you could also try to take a nap. But I'm not great at napping, so boredom isn't going to help me. Exhaustion would. So I'm rating exhaustion over boredom.
Okay, well, fair enough. We're going to talk about all that. We got all of that stuff coming, but I have to give a shout out to our sponsor, Manscaped. Today's episode is sponsored by Manscaped, the leaders in below the waist grooming. It is still back to school time. I've seen all your photos, all your kids looking cute, ready to go to school. We want to make sure that you pack the essentials, you, the grown-ups, uh, to have the best year yet. So check out the Manscaped 4th Generation Performance Package. It'd be ready for whatever your schedule is this year. It's the perfect package for your package. It includes the brand new Lawnmower 4.0. Go, I love this. Go for the valedictorian of ball trimming and join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. So go to manscaped.com, do a little shopping, but make sure that you use the promo code BATSCAPED, 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 for 20% off and free shipping. You can't beat it. We would appreciate it. The products are high quality. We love it. I use them daily now. And so you buy yourself something nice and you get 20% off and you're supporting Holy BatCast in the process. Everybody wins, but especially you and your balls. See, that's how much we care about you. We're looking out for you and your balls and anybody else who has close encounters with your balls. That's how much we care here on Holy BatCast. So do a little back to school shopping for you or for your loved ones. But whatever you're going to buy, use that promo code BATSCAPED for 20% off, and we would certainly appreciate it. So please do that. And yeah, I think you'll like what you get. So moving forward. Okay, I gotta say, we said it's exhausting. It's never boring. I feel like it's a roller coaster, Sean, because there's
I think
ups and there's downs.
that's accurate.
Like, do you remember the Treehouse of Horror when Homer buys the possessed Krusty doll?
Yes.
And the guy is like, you get a free Frogurt. That's good. It is also cursed. That's bad. But it comes with your choice of toppings. That's good. But the toppings, contain sodium benzoate. That's bad. That's what it's like being a DC fan. Something happens, it's good. Something happens, it's bad. And back and forth and back and forth. And that's what this past week has been, or what it's felt like, at least for me. So let's start with it's bad. And I think it's bad. Let me say, I think it's bad. There's still a lot of folks who are like, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And that is the fact that the new animated Batman show, Batman Caped Crusader, that was being produced by J.J. Abrams, Matt Reeves, and Bruce Timm, and Ed Brubaker, is no longer moving forward at HBO Max. But that doesn't mean it's canceled. There has been, a lot of wordsmithing around this that has caused a lot of conjecture and going back and forth. It's not being produced for HBO Max anymore, but it is still being produced because they're going to shop it around to other streaming services or networks. And they're not just doing it with Batman Caped Crusader, they're also doing it with Merry Little Batman, which was a Batman Christmas special, which I hope that gets picked up because I love those things. Also, The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, Bye Bye Bunny, a Looney Tunes musical. Did I Do That to the Holidays, a Steve Urkel story, and The Amazing World of Gumball, the movie. So it's all of this animated content that they no longer want for HBO Max, and so they are going to shop it out and see if they can sell it to someone else. So before I get into my feelings on this, Sean, how are you feeling about this?
This one hurt. Batman Caped Crusader. I guess we can't technically call it going away, but
yeah,
I would say it's in jeopardy, right? Because it's not at a place where its future is assured like it seemed it was, because it was automatic, right? That it's homegrown, it's in the IP that Warner Brothers owns and can easily put on their streaming platform. And so that just seemed like automatic. And now they're in a position where they're going to have to shop the show. And I understand all the reasons why you could say somebody will definitely snatch this up, but do they want it at the price that Warner is going to want to get for it in order to actually make it worth their while to produce the show? And I would say it seems like a no-brainer that if you've got deep pockets like Amazon or Netflix or Apple, and you have the opportunity to buy an Apple, by the way, Ted Lasso is a Warner show that Apple pays for. So
Mm-hmm.
this sort of thing does exist. I know we don't hear as much
I
about.
mean, Sandman is now on Netflix, right?
Yeah,
Same
I mean,
kind of thing.
yeah, we think of licensing as dead in a lot of ways, but that's incorrect. It still is a thing, and so I'm hoping that it has a future somewhere, but until that future it comes by way of actual news saying this network or streamer or whatever has picked up the show and it's actually going to come out, then yeah, this one hurts. I mean, this seemed like something that was the best of all worlds for Batman. And I know that might seem like an overstatement because somebody would shout in their car or wherever right now, well, it's not a live action movie, so who really cares? I care. And I think a lot of people our age certainly care. For people who are nostalgic BTAS fans from all the way, which is now like this year is the 30th anniversary of Batman the Animated Series. It's like days away from when we're recording this. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of us have loved the show for a long time, whether you were there when it was airing or you found it later. But all of us kept watching. And I felt like when I say best of all worlds, not only did it serve an audience that either found Batman that way or got to, in my case, explore Batman and that mythology on a much deeper level and be inspired to go even deeper into it with the comics and everything else. You might be in that group, or you might be the one who's been waiting to show your kid new episodes of Batman Cape Crusader or Batman the Animated. And I know it wasn't going to be exactly the same, but it's Bruce Timm. So come on. So to have it be the best of all worlds, give a new generation a Batman show. And I know it was going to be darker and it wasn't going to be quite as kid friendly as Batman the Animated Series was, but I do think it was going to have some sort of balance. And I really hope that we get to see that. I don't think it's the best idea in the world to just ignore animation and also ignore kids programming as a general rule for Warner Brothers Discovery, but certainly as it relates to DC. A lot of us found these characters and fell in love with these characters at a very young age and stuck with it. So I do think there is still tremendous value in serving a young audience. And I don't really know what the plan is for that. So strategically, I don't love the move, but then just purely as a fan, I was so excited when this show was announced. I hate the idea that it is in jeopardy. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that we get some good news and it does show up somewhere on a streamer that I actually subscribe to, not like some rando that I have to start subscribing to. Give me one of the majors to start playing Batman Cape Crusader.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start because I have a lot of mixed emotions and mixed feelings about this. But I guess we'll start with I'm not super concerned that we won't see it. I think that you're right. Right now it is homeless, but I do think that a new Batman animated series won't be homeless for long. I think someone will pick it up. So my disappointment in this is less about I won't get to see it because I think I will get to see it. I think we will. It's more of just the underlying strategy or the underlying prioritization that is leading to these decisions. That's what is so discouraging to me. It's that they think that, yes, new kids programming is not enough value to drive people to HBO Max. And so they think there's more value in just licensing it or selling it to someone else. I do, from a business perspective, I can kind of understand it. I can kind of play devil's advocate in my own mind and go, and it's something that actually we talked about on our last episode when we talked about a lot of these other things that were happening over there at WB about when something lands on HBO Max, it's very hard to attach a dollar amount for the revenue that content creates, as opposed to when something gets sold or licensed or actually plays in theaters, then you know exactly how much money that brought in. And that's what this feels like to me is they're like, well, we put it on HBO Max. Yeah, we might get more subscribers. People might watch it, but we can't say it made us this much money. If we sell it to Netflix for this much money, we know. And it does appear that David Zaslav, right now his main priority is finding cost cutting and finding new revenue streams. And so it seems like this is just another part of that strategy of like, hey, these are big IPs, Batman and Looney Tunes. But again, to think of Batman and Looney Tunes and saying, well, we don't want them for our streaming service because they're of more value to us to sell them to another one. That just feels, what's the phrase, penny wise but pound foolish? That you would rather sell your most valuable IP to someone else to create a revenue stream than to keep it in-house for your own assets and for your own investment. That's why I'm so like discouraged by this, and that's why I thought it was such bad news. Is I'm like, God, like if a Batman animated series produced by J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves and Bruce Timm is one that they're like, we don't need it for our service. It's more valuable to us if we sell it. That's just like, to me, that just shows where your priorities lie. And right now, that feels like a bad call.
I think it's a bad call to make the math easier for the sake of making it easier. And so, yes, it's much easier to attach the literal dollar amount that you get from a license or box office if it's a movie. I understand all of that. And I also understand that streaming needs to be profitable. For the past several years, it's been all about subscriber growth. But now, like, is this actually making money? So I totally get that. And I totally get that everywhere priorities are shifting. But I do think you need to pick a lane if you're Warner Brothers Discovery. Do you believe in your streaming or do you not? And if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't, if you think licensing is the way that you're going to make the most money, and there's an argument to be made for that, fine. Get rid of HBO Max and start licensing everything. But if you're going to have a streaming service, and as far as I know they have a great discounted deal for brand new subscribers, but for those of us who have been there, they're not charging me any less as they start to take away things that they said were going to be on the service, take away things that were already there because they don't want to pay residuals or whatever it may be. And so, through all their cost cutting, what they are doing is they are decreasing the value of HBO Max. And I do have a problem with that. I mean, I am a consumer. It's, as I said,
I'm paying
you know,
for it. Yeah, I'm paying
yeah,
$15 a month for it.
I'm paying
Yeah.
for it. So I want to have the things that were promised to me as part of the deal. And so, and I get it. Nothing is technically ever promised in terms and conditions and whatever. And I know that I checked boxes that said that they are allowed to do this, and I have no recourse. I get all of those things, but as far as just how I feel as a fan, I think it's kind of weird to say, well, we don't believe in streaming enough that we're going to license this stuff, but we're still going to keep it going and hope that it kind of works. I don't know. Half in, half out never really tends to work all that well. And so I think for HBO Max and Warner Discovery, if they want to keep it going, a big part of the value is exclusivity. And the idea that if you want to watch Batman, especially new Batman, I know they have existing licensing deals that mean like the Nolan Batman movies and everything else disappears from HBO Max and ends up somewhere else for a few months before reverting back and all of that. I know you can't do anything about existing contracts, but for new things, the only place to watch Batman is HBO Max. I think there's value in that. I think that's a huge hook. I think that is what keeps people subscribed, to make people feel like they need to stay subscribed to HBO Max. I do think that kids programming, while it doesn't necessarily need to be the focus of HBO Max like it is on Disney Plus, I think there is value in an increasingly competitive streaming environment to having more of a one-stop shop. You want to be the service that people feel like they have to have by offering the most complete experience that you can. And it may not mean that, again, you may not be able to compete with Disney for kids programming, but you got to have enough to keep people on your app so they're not going elsewhere. Your goal should be, if we're going to have a streaming app, we know that most people are going to have 2 or 3 streaming subscriptions at this point going forward, but we want to be the last one they cancel when times get tough. And the last one they're going to cancel is the one that people feel is the most complete. So strategically, I don't like the way they're turning HBO Max into almost a niche streaming product. And I don't really think that works out because it's not priced that way. It's priced right where Netflix is and where the Disney Plus Hulu bundle is. And so it's not really competitive in that way. So strategically, I have some issues with it. I understand the short-term gains with licensing, but if you're going to go licensing, then quit the streaming game and go full Sony. Sony is making a boatload of money right now by being the only major seller in town in a city full, in an industry full of buyers right now. So for Warner Brothers to get in there right alongside Sony, that is I would understand that strategy if that's what they were doing all across the board, but it's not. It's piece by piece of what gets licensed versus what goes on HBO Max. And if you want to go that route, okay, but I would at least keep the most valuable things exclusive to my streaming platform. So I would do whatever I could, and you don't have to do a whole lot because you already own it, to keep Batman on HBO Max as much as I possibly could.
Well, and when HBO Max has a hub for DC and
Right.
a hub for Looney Tunes, and you're not going to be adding the new content for those two IPs into those hubs because you'd rather sell them to someone else, again, like you're not even invested in your own IP at that point. Um,
Yeah.
and then to your point, since you brought it up, is it's crazy to me right now that the messaging for HBO Max, which this is all kind of heartbreaking because I think HBO Max thus far has been terrific. I've
It
loved
has
it.
been.
I think that the library has been great. I think that, I go there a lot for a lot of things, not just DC, because let's be honest, I own all that shit anyway. But for all the other stuff, there's so much and it's really good. And so I've been very happy with HBO Max. And right now, as they're just stripping away content, and like you said, it's all to save money. It's content that they don't want to pay residuals, they don't want to pay licensing for. And so the story is, oh, they're removing this from HBO Max. They're removing this from HBO Max. They remove this, and this, and this. And like personally, selfishly, most of that's stuff I don't watch anyway, but I'm still smart enough to go, but man, like all you're doing is offering less value for your streaming service when we're in the midst of these streaming wars. And then while the news cycle is saying, oh, a bunch more crap got removed from HBO Max, at the same time, they're going, hey, new subscribers, save 40%. And it's like, those are very conflicting messages. And
Hmm.
so I feel like they should just own it and go, HBO Max, save 40% for 40% less
Yeah.
content.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, get this deal because it's not as good. We know.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I
save
That's
money because we're taking crap off every day. And I also,
exactly.
and this is, this is very hurtful to the industry and for creatives in the industry who their shows have just disappeared
Right.
and are no longer available anywhere. And you know this, working in the industry, you're as good as your last project. And these people can't even point to these projects that have been wiped from a streaming service because they're trying to save money and go, oh yeah, I did this show for 4 years, it's gone now. But trust me, it was real. It's just
Yeah.
it's again, I understand that they're trying to like find all of these savings to deal with this debt that they were burdened with, and we were talking about that offline yesterday because I didn't even understand this debt that seemed to come out of nowhere, and apparently it came from AT&T. I didn't know that. So I do get that, but again, like it just feels like short term decisions with no mind for long term investment.
Right. And I think that, well, first off, I did watch Close Enough. That was a great and hilarious animated series and rewatched that show. And I can't go back on HBO Max and rewatch it. That was one of the shows that they pulled. So they really did take value away from my HBO Max subscription. And shout out to the creators and cast of that show. It was hilarious. And that's really just something that I am concerned about. And I know I was on Twitter this week, as I tend to be, and I saw everybody looking at the Matt Reeves deal saying, see, Warner's relationship with talent is fine. And I'd say,
What a great segue. That's up next.
and
Please keep going.
I'd say, okay, great. Their relationship with talent is fine. Like, yeah, the top, the kings, their relationship amongst the elite, the royalty in terms of where they've been at in terms of box office. Yeah, sure. Those relationships are great because those are the ones that they are going to prioritize and they are going to value. But not everybody who you're going to work with is already at the top of the game. So when you look at long-term relationships for creatives, to know that this is a place that will erase your work. Either it will never let you see they will never let your work see the light of day, like Batgirl, except they'll have secret screenings that you get to watch your work that none of the rest of the world is going to have an opportunity to see. They'll show you that in secret on the lot, but for everybody else, no such luck. And then if you actually do make it, and unless you have some semblance of working in this industry, nobody has any idea how hard it is to get anything made, even if it sucks. Nobody has any idea just how hard it is, how many hoops you have to jump through to make anything. And to take something that actually made it, that got onto a major streaming platform and
Mm-hmm.
people liked it, but
Mm-hmm.
somebody said, well, there's not enough people still watching it to be worth your residuals, so we're just wiping it away, which nobody does. It's one thing when it's television and nobody pays to syndicate your show anymore because audiences don't care. Usually, if it's an original streaming series, then it gets to stay on that series. It just gets to live there. Like Netflix shows get to live there. And when it's licensed, it doesn't get to. But when it's an original, it gets to stay there. And that's just been the practice. That's just been the expectation. And so to just erase the work is something that is, I find very, very troubling, to say the least. And I do think that if you are a creator, be it director, writer, whatever, not everybody gets to be choosy about
Mm-hmm.
where they work. And
Mm-hmm.
if Warner is the only buyer for your show or your movie, then yeah, you probably got to go sell it to them and make it for them, and hope that it sees the light of the light of day and gets to stay in the sun. But if you have options, I don't know why you're not looking more aggressively at the options to go elsewhere, because nobody else is doing some of the things that Warner Brothers Discovery has been doing for the past few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought it up, and it was where I wanted to go next, because this all happened, I think, Monday, and it was very disappointing. And again, there for the folks who were like, it's fine, it's no big deal. I can't get there, but God bless. And then you're right. The next day, we got some good news. But I don't think that it is coincidental that on Monday we hear that the new Batman animated series that is partly produced and run by Matt Reeves is no longer going to be going on HBO Max, and they're going to shop it around, and they're going to hopefully sell it, which, again, with the talent attached to that, feels like a bad move in a lot of ways. And then the next day it's like, oh, but don't worry, we made a long-term deal with Matt Reeves. Everything's fine. He's got a first look deal at the studio. He's continuing work on Batman 2. And so, yeah, like it's all good. And you're right. A lot of people are like, see, and I even said, I'm like, well, you know what? Over the past month, with the amount of decisions being made from Warner Brothers Discovery, and they all feel like cost cutting or financial decisions only, this is the first news I feel actually is of a creatively
Yeah.
minded decision.
Actually
It
feels like an investment over a tax
right.
break.
Right, exactly. This is the first news since all of this has started going on where I'm like, oh, good, they finally are doing something that is about preserving a creative relationship. And you're right, though, it's for one of the most important guys that they want to keep happy because of the Batman. And I also think that, like, Zaslav is the one who's making all these hard decisions, these cost cutting, these money saving decisions. But it's Michael DeLuca and Pamela Abdi who are running Warner Brothers Pictures. They made this long term deal with Matt Reeves. So I almost feel like it was like Zaslav decided, nope, these shows aren't going to HBO Max, and they were like, oh crap, we're going to piss off Matt Reeves. And so WB, DeLuca, and Abdi are like, no, it's fine, Matt. We got you. It almost feels like a little bit of like damage control.
Yeah. Well, these deals don't happen fast. I mean, I know they get reported on, but even when the trades get a lot of this stuff, it's weeks old, sometimes months old, and maybe the deal just got signed, but this is almost assuredly something that they've been developing, working on probably since the Batman came out, if not before then. So if I'm going to give David Zaslav credit for anything on this one, at least this is another thing. It's not another thing he canceled. I'll put it that way. He could have come
Yeah,
in and said,
yeah,
we're
yeah.
not doing this overall deal for Matt Reeves, but I think even Zaslav would have to know that it makes sense because he does still care about box office. He does. And
No,
now
he
his
does. He does.
his
And he does care about DC.
Mhm.
We'll see how that goes, but I will at least give him credit. He has been very clear that DC is like number one priority, as it should be.
Yeah, he's got a funny way of going about it so far, but at least in this one,
Well, it seems
I,
like DC theatrical is his priority.
yes,
How about
yeah.
that?
If you're going to make, and you have, and Matt Reeves is a part of that, and Matt
Yes,
Reeves at
yes.
this point is an essential part of that. So yeah, you've got to make a deal with Matt Reeves, and if it was already in the works when you stepped in, if you're David Zaslav, you have to keep that deal going. I also think that's a huge part of why a show like Peacemaker, that is a fairly expensive show, survived on HBO Max, whereas a lot of original stuff for HBO Max, not just the family stuff, but a lot of HBO Max originals, including dramas, have started to go away. And I think Peacemaker made it because that's a relationship they have to preserve. James
Mhm.
Gunn is going to finish Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and then he's probably done with Marvel Studios for a while, if not forever. And because he's already said he's done with Guardians after this. So unless he's got something else he wants to go do with Marvel, he's probably going to want to go make another DC movie at some point. But if Peacemaker, which had already been renewed, goes away and doesn't get a season 2, you jeopardize that relationship. So I think David Zaslav, at least at this point, knows that there are certain individuals that, in order to see it through with his interests of DC theatrical, there are relationships that he has to preserve, that he has to nurture, even if it's other people working underneath him who are doing that legwork. It doesn't matter. That's their jobs to do it. And so, yes, Matt Reeves is still around. And yeah, they're probably going to keep doing business with James Gunn. So, yeah, the big names that you already know that are already in this space and have already been incredibly successful. I think when you look at it from that perspective, everything's fine. But you also have to understand that if you're going to build out a 10-year plan of DC movies, you're not going to be able to rely exclusively on the biggest filmmakers in town. You're going to need some emerging talent. And those are some of the folks that may not be as attracted to some of these DC movies that David Zaslav is eventually going to want to make. So in the short term, not all of this is as terrible as it may seem. And there are some things that are actually pretty good, but there are I definitely have some long-term questions of how all of this is going to work out. And I cannot give you credit for your 10-year plan when we're still in year 0.
And I completely agree with that. And that's what I've been saying is like, it's great to say you have a 10-year plan. They all had 10-year plans.
Yeah.
They all,
Sujihara.
They all had plans, and
Jeff
all those
Johns,
plans
John Berg.
fell apart almost immediately, and none of them came to fruition. So, you know what? I'll cross my fingers and hope for the best for this new 10-year plan, which is the 5th 10-year plan in 10 years.
Yeah. Let me know when somebody can make it past 2 years of their 10-year plan, and then I'll start worrying about it.
Exactly. And that's just it. But he's got a 10-year plan. What is it? We don't know yet.
Yeah.
I can tell you I got a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
So, I completely agree with that. It's like, let's see how it goes. I mean, I hope you're right. I hope you're the one to finally do it. Because we all want DC to be in a nice, healthy space. But right now, again, all the decisions we're seeing being made, tend to be bottom line oriented and not so creatively inspiring. And to your point, yes, I'm sure this was in the works for a while. But again, I feel like the announcement of it was suspect.
It was definitely, do we have that deal done? Get it done and get it out. We need a win right now. We need some positivity. We need some excitement. And look, it worked, right? It didn't necessarily distract you and I, but it certainly gave people some hope that, okay, they're not blowing up everything.
Yeah.
But we already knew that they weren't, right? A
Right.
Joker movie, a Joker sequel just got greenlit and is going into production. So we knew they're not blowing up the stuff that makes money. And so the Batman made money. The sequel will make more money because it's going to be coming out in a theatrical market that will have recovered even more than the market that this one the first one came out in. All of these things are wins, and all of these things point to positive things and worthy investments for Warner Brothers Discovery to continue with. So yeah, that's why these types of deals get made. And so we'll still have, I'm not sitting here worried like we're never going to get good DC movies, or we're not going to get any or any of those things. That's not my concern. We're going to get awesome Batman movies and other stuff. Like, it's going to happen, but there's also you just want it to be on more solid footing, and you just want to feel like there's more trust there. And I know trust has to be earned over time, but also with the way things have gone these first few weeks, like just deleting a Batgirl movie, not a great way to start off a brand new relationship with DC fans if you're with, the new bosses in town.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's just it is right now. It's, it's a very bad look. And I agree with you. And I've been saying that too, the silver lining is we will still be getting DC content. We will still be getting DC movies. That's not going to go away. We don't know what they're going to be. We don't know when they're going to come out. That changes daily, but we will get them. So at least we will still have content to enjoy. But the fact that, yes, it is still so tumultuous and new boss, new year, new boss, new strategy. It's just, to go back to the beginning, exhausting.
Are you worried at all about aggressive product placement in DC movies?
I hadn't even thought about it.
I kind of am.
I wouldn't be shocked.
Just knowing the way that every penny gets pinched here, that I just feel I'll get drive-through. We're just going to have a whole new era
back to
of
that
in DC movies.
Oh my God. Who did Greg Kinnear play in Mystery Man? Because didn't he have a bunch of logos like on his costume and stuff? I think that'll be the new Superman movie.
Well, they
Um,
should just make that the new Booster Gold movie, the first Booster Gold movie,
that
because
would
that
be
makes a ton of
funny.
sense.
Yeah, yeah, it would actually work. So I mean, yeah, so they've made this long-term deal with Matt Reeves. He is continuing to develop the Batman 2. I was never worried about the Batman 2 because, like we said, the Batman made money. So of all the things that were in jeopardy, I never considered this to be one of them. It also seems like the Penguin series is still moving forward. It's still supposed to begin filming early next year. So all of that is moving forward. And then another little tidbit that came out of this announcement is that Mattson Tomlin will be co-writing the Batman 2 with Matt Reeves. He didn't get an official writing credit on the Batman, but apparently he did help Reeves with some story work in the third act. So I know that he tweeted out he was excited to be doing it. I don't have any strong opinions on him one way or the other. Um, but moving forward.
Yeah, I was actually surprised when he wasn't credited on the Batman because just following him on Twitter, he seemed to be pretty involved in the Batman, especially in some of the early going and then even in some of the later stages. So I knew he had done work on it, and great if that's a creative partnership that works with Matt Reeves, and obviously it is. They've worked together on other stuff besides Batman, so it's just to me getting the team back together and perhaps in a bigger way now. But yeah, that's a total win. Yeah, the Batman 2 was never in any sort of danger. That's where I would say at this point, nothing would shock me except that the Batman 2 going away would shock me
Mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm.
it's Batman. The first one made enough money, and we already know they're venturing into Joker territory in the sequel. And anytime you can put Joker on the big screen, do it because that will also make a ton of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So that'll keep moving forward. There was a little bit of hand wringing because again it was, I think, the word usage of, the Batman 2 hasn't been greenlit yet because it's still development, and then a bunch
Yeah.
of people ran with that. But we
That's a
all know
lot of
that,
people not knowing what a green light
yeah,
actually
what that means. I
means.
said I said you don't greenlight it until you have a script and a budget, and
Yeah.
you don't have that yet.
Yeah, green light basically means we are going to fund this now. We are
Yeah,
actually going to start paying to make this thing. And so it is a fairly most things they get greenlit in little steps. We're going to pay to have somebody write this. If it's a
yeah,
show, then you
yeah,
open up a writer's room. If it's a single writer, whatever, we're going to pay for writing. We're going to pay some people to come in and break this down and figure out what a budget would be, but you go through all of that before you get a green light to start pre-prep and then actual prep and then get into production. It's all these different milestones to get that actual green light of we now as the studio will give you money to make this thing.
yeah, for sure. So again, I was never worried about it. A couple people were, but that was again because of some misleading headlines. But I always figured the Batman 2 was a pretty safe bet. But we did mention that, there was a Batgirl movie and it got canceled. But this little piece of news came out just recently is that apparently they had what were called funeral screenings of Batgirl on the WB lot for the cast and crew so they could at least see their work before it gets locked away forever.
Ugh.
And there was also a little tidbit in there. This was reported by the Hollywood Reporter, so it's as legit as it gets. There was also a note in there about it could be as drastic as them destroying the footage after this to prove to the IRS that it will never be released, so they can make sure they get their tax write off. I don't think that will happen, but God knows at this point. Um, but what do you think of funeral screenings for a movie? That is unprecedented.
I'd have to say that on this one, I don't know how to feel because it's really about the people who made it. And so how I feel doesn't really matter. I could see both sides of it if you're somebody who made like both sides of feeling about it. Like if you are somebody who was part of the cast and crew, you would like to see it. You would like to see, I mean, as much as you can because it wasn't finished. I know the directors Adil and Bilal said that there was pretty much no VFX on it, and also they were going to need to do some additional photography to finish the movie. So nobody gets to see a finished product for
Mm-hmm.
Batgirl, and so I think do you want to see as much as you can? I could understand seeing it that way. I could also understand if a different cast or crew member decided I don't want to see it. It's rubbing it in. It's too painful. Like to look at the work that we did, revisit how hard we worked on this thing and to see how it was coming together, but then also know that they're never going to let us finish this thing and nobody else is ever going to get to see it. I wouldn't know how to, if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't really know which way to feel. And I mean, I would have to see how it would end up. But as far as how I feel, it just highlights how sad this whole thing is. It's sad to have quote unquote funeral screenings and that it's all in secret on the lot. And this is the only way that these people get to see this movie that they worked so hard on. And make no mistake, people work so hard on this. Like, in order to, as I said, make anything, it takes a lot. And it takes a lot of incredibly hard work and long hours. And by the way, making things in COVID has only made things even harder than they already were. And so to see them have to, the idea that they have to go in and this is the only way they get to see their work and have to carry into and out of that screening the knowledge that nobody else ever gets to see it. uh, Best case scenario, it's bittersweet, but with a lot more bitter than sweet. And so it just highlights how sad the whole thing is.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page because that was just how I felt. I'm like, God, that's just so sad and it's morbid. I guess it's nice that they at least get to see something, I guess. Like, but it's just so sad, right? Like, um,
I mean, if people actually asked for it, like if people were saying we at least want to see it, or if the director
yeah,
said we
yeah.
want the cast and crew to be able to see it, if that's what it was, then I'm all for it. And if it was a pity offering by the corporate powers that be of like, well, we'll at least let you do this before we lock it away for good, that's a little tougher to get by. But at the same time, I will say like the idea that they're just going to delete the footage, they're not going to do it. They don't. I don't think they have to. I think there were other articles that came out and pointed out that the Hollywood Reporter is pretty solid on that, but that's still speculative as far as what they would
Yeah,
actually need to
yeah.
do. You don't need to do that. It's still a loss. If for some reason they do end up making money on that asset of Batgirl because they decide to finish the movie and put it out in some way that makes them money, then they can pay the taxes on it at that time. And if there's any penalty for taking a deduction they weren't supposed to take, they could pay that penalty. But guess what? Based on the way this regime treasures its tax write-offs, they're not going to risk it. So they won't delete the footage, but it will remain hidden away on some server. And then, hey, if this group turns out to be like any of their predecessors, and somebody else comes in 3 years from now with their own 10-year plan, then maybe Batgirl will see the light of day.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I never thought it was going to be deleted. It was just an interesting line where I was like, "What? That's insane." Um, but yeah, the funeral screenings are just so weird and it's so sad. But you mentioned that the co-directors Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah, they actually released a video
Mm-hmm.
addressing this, and it was also really it's really sad.
It
Um,
was.
it was heartbreaking, because I mean, and it's sort of the message we've gotten from everybody who worked on this film is just they're heartbroken. They put their hearts and souls into it. They were really proud of it. Um, and the fact that they were, one of them was on his honeymoon and like
Yeah.
they were on a little bit of a break in post-production so one of them could get married, and then this is what happens. It's just heartbreaking. So the video is out there of them talking about it, talking about they had a lot of work to do. They had visual effects they needed to complete. They just had the first cut, but they were so excited and they had nothing but nice things to say about everybody who worked on it. But it was just very sad. But I don't know if you noticed how they sneakily put in some behind the scenes footage in their video,
Yeah.
which
So I mean,
I respect. And it was
they're doing what they
cool.
can.
It was cool. I was like, oh, that looks really cool. Like Batgirl on her cycle and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
a couple nice little action shots. And obviously, it came from their phones where they were just shooting it behind
Oh
the
yeah.
scenes. But I was like, oh, I have not
Hey,
seen that before. That looked
and
really
that's a risk
cool.
for them. That
Yeah.
is 100% a violation of the NDA that they surely signed to come in and direct a Batgirl movie. At least I would be shocked if they didn't have an NDA in place. But at this point, what is Warner Brothers Discovery going to do that they haven't already done? How could they
Right.
hurt these guys
Right. Yeah.
anymore? I mean, I suppose they could try and sue them, but I think Warner Brothers Discovery, they're happy enough with how bad this already looks. They don't want to make it look any worse. And so it's just
You don't want to
sad.
kick them when
Yeah,
they're down. Yeah. Like,
no, and they're clearly down in that video,
yeah.
and it was heartbreaking because you just know they poured so much of themselves and sacrificed so much, as their crew did, as their cast did, and they're the ones who were steering the ship. And so to see just the heartbreak written all over their faces, you couldn't help but feel for them. As a fan, I'm disappointed that I don't get to see that Batgirl movie. As a human being, I can't help but just be even more heartbroken just looking at knowing or being able to at least imagine how much work everybody put into it, and to know how they were made to feel by this decision, regardless of whatever tax write-off, business justification you want to go ahead and assign to it. And I'm sure there's some business justification for it somewhere. I haven't seen one that convinces me, but nevertheless, I'm not in charge of the financial performance of Warner Brothers Discovery. So, whatever the reason for the decision, there's no question the impact is pretty severe on the folks who work so hard to bring us this story. For those of us as fans who were ready to receive it with open arms. Doesn't mean we were going to love it. Doesn't mean we were going to hate it. We have no idea because we'll never see it. But we should have had the opportunity to see these guys and this entire team tell their story. And it is very, very sad that that day, at least as of now, doesn't appear to be in sight.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that they said how they found out about it and they were immediately locked out of the servers where they
Yep.
wouldn't be able to.
Oh yeah,
It's
that's a
just,
whole other level of it being calculated. Like
yeah, like cold blooded. But and to your
nobody
point,
was
like,
going to be the opportunity to be Ryan Reynolds leaking Deadpool footage, even though he swears he
yeah,
didn't,
yeah,
or
yeah,
Deadpool concept footage anyway. Not that they had shot anything at that point. Yeah, they were not going to give anybody any opportunity to give to put anything out for an audience to try and rally behind.
yeah. And speaking of like talent relations again, like, these guys, and they talked about this a little bit in their video and it's been out there, is how they've gotten all this very public support from other big filmmakers and other studios, Kevin Feige, James Gunn, like, who
Yeah.
have like been out there supporting these guys. And so it's just, man, it's just such a bad look for creative talent relations, and especially because these two guys are so on the up and up right now, and to
Hmm.
have them making a Batgirl movie was a huge win for the studio. And then
It
to,
was.
to, you know, just disrespect them this way, I guess, let me say it that way, is just, it's mind blowing to me.
Yeah, to have this directing duo who was hot, right? Coming off
Yeah.
of Bad Boys, like AKA the only movie that got to make money in 2020, and to go from that to what they just did with Miss Marvel being a hit on Disney Plus, and of course, they shot Miss Marvel long before it ever premiered or streamed on Disney Plus, but I was even thinking, well, Marvel Studios is going to keep these guys in house and try to get them attached to something. But then when you're DC, you get to come in with something like Batgirl, and yeah, you get them to jump over to your side and make a movie for you. And they were obviously excited about it and ready to go do it, and they did it. They didn't get to
Mm-hmm.
finish it, sadly, but it was a huge win, I thought, for Warner Brothers to get these guys to come in
Yeah.
and make a
Yeah.
Batgirl movie. And now you put them in a position where I don't know how they would ever want to work with this studio again. I know I said before, if you're brand new and your only option, your only potential buyer is Warner Brothers, okay, fine. I guess that's where you got to go sell your
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
For these guys, I would fully understand if they decide if we're down to Warner Brothers Discovery and it's our last studio, I guess we're going to find another line of work.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right. Well, that's revisiting the Batgirl stuff as more information has come out, which is interesting. But in good news, we're gonna get to see Black Adam in October, I think.
So
Um,
far.
and then we're gonna get to see Shazam at Christmas. Wait, no, that's not right anymore because they changed it again. So, Yeah, it seems like they're committed to Black Adam for October. That does feel like it's happening. It feels like the marketing machine is in full swing, so it seems like that's probably not moving. But they changed release dates on us again for the rest of the slate. And so Shazam Fury of the Gods was supposed to be released for Christmas, um, and has now been bumped back to its one of its previous release dates. Didn't it used to be in March of 23?
I think so, but
I
who can remember
think.
at this point?
Yeah. So it's been moved back to March 17th of 2023, which was where Aquaman 2 was. And Aquaman 2 moved from March all the way to Christmas of 2023. This was a huge slate shakeup. It wasn't just the DC stuff. They also moved The Nun 2. They took the remake of Salem's Lot off the schedule for now. There was a House Party remake that was coming for HBO Max that will now be released in theaters in December. And so no mention of The Flash, which I thought was interesting, or
Right.
Blue Beetle. So,
Best not to make any promises about the Flash at this point.
or Blue Beetle.
That too.
So we were having this conversation last night, and like, you know what? In better times, I would have taken this news in stride. I
Sure.
think, if this was sort of an isolated thing, I'd go, okay, stuff happens, and I can kind of see this, and I can kind of see this. But just with everything that's happening, they do not have the benefit of the doubt for me right now. And you know me, I love giving WB the benefit of the doubt,
Absolutely.
but I'm all used up, man.
Yeah.
It's all gone. My benefit of the doubt bucket is empty. And so
Yeah.
everything, even like this, where I'm like, what are you guys up to? What the hell are you doing now? So the Shazam move. Okay, cool. I'm okay with this because it was opening opposite Avatar 2. Avatar 2 does seem like it's finally coming out after the 15-year wait. So okay, cool. Get it out of the way of Avatar. I'm not even mad at that. I'm so excited about Aquaman 2 still. And to push that another 9 months is like, whoa, man. That's crazy to me. And
Mm-hmm.
again, with no mention of the other two DC movies that are currently on the slate for next year. And we were talking about it, and we were talking about it with our friend Robert, and Robert's like, hey, man, that's 4 DC movies next year. And I was like, yeah, there were supposed to be 4 DC movies this year.
Right.
And they moved all of these dates 6 months ago. And now they're moving them all again. So it's just like, it just feels like further mess. And then Boris Kitt and, oh God, where does Boris Kitt report for us? Hit Hollywood
Hollywood
Reporter?
Reporter.
Hollywood Reporter. And he's legit. He says it's because the scuttlebutt is that it's not just a scheduling thing. It's because they are so short on cash that they can't afford to promote more movies this year.
Right. They have to spread out the marketing spend for each of these movies, which, speaking of the whole prospect of 4 DC movies next year, that problem will await them next year if they have to promote. Oh man, I hate the way I even just said that. They have to promote 4 DC movies next year.
Yeah.
You should never look at it that way. You get to promote 4 DC movies next year. We'll see what happens with the Flash. But as far as things go, and I'll stay away from my Flash feelings. But as far as where things go from here, or actually, real quick, I want to circle back because I gave like a very pessimistic hypothetical for Adil and Bilal. They will not end up in that spot where Warner Brothers Discovery is their only buyer. They'll have plenty of places to go. Big
absolutely.
movies and shows.
Everyone will be happy to work with them after this.
Absolutely. And because of the work they've done, not just because, they got a great sympathy vote right now.
No, 100%. It's both.
Yeah, they're great directors who people love working with. And so, yes, they will continue to shine elsewhere since Warner Brothers decided they didn't want to show the world the latest from that team. But as far as where things are with Shazam and moving, that makes sense to me. I never thought for a second that Shazam Fury of the Gods was really going to stand its ground and try to go toe-to-toe with an Avatar sequel. There was no way. And it just doesn't make sense. I don't care whether or not you feel that I'm not the biggest Avatar fan in the world. Doesn't matter. So it's the highest grossing movie of all time. I know it took a re-release to get there again, but hey, whatever. It's the highest grossing, and it's going to get another re-release to put even more distance between itself and Avengers Endgame and the rest of the field that comes out from now until the end of movies. But people are going to want to see that movie. Even if they don't necessarily love Avatar, they'll still want to go check out what the hell has James Cameron been working on for the past decade and a half. If for nothing else, there's going to be curiosity. And also,
Well, and can I say this? And I say this a lot because it's so funny.
yeah,
Because I mean, I agree with you. I'm not the biggest Avatar fan in the world. I do like the first movie, but you see so many of these, fans, movie
yeah,
fans, being like, "Oh, nobody cares about Avatar anymore," and I'm like, "Y'all, you're gonna bet against James Cameron? Are you
don't do it.
really?" I never bet against James Cameron. I'm sorry, never. Y'all were betting against him with the first Avatar, and guess
Right.
what happened? I'm sorry. If I'm putting my
You're
money, I'm putting it on him.
Yeah, your only excuse for betting against James Cameron is if you are extremely young and you don't know any better, but you have every resource to be at your disposal to be able to know better. And don't bet against James Cameron. And here's the other thing that you can't bet against. We'll see how Avatar performs. I think it's going to do outstanding. But you know who else is betting on Avatar? IMAX. And so if you're Shazam Fury of the Gods trying to get premium format theaters, which you desperately need because that's where so many of these movies make so much of their money, especially now in since 2020, you have to have those IMAX screens. And if you put out Shazam Fury of the Gods this December, you're giving up those IMAX screens. You just know you're not going to get them. You're not going to get to
Mm-hmm.
screen your movie in IMAX. And really, you're going to struggle to get any sort of premium format theater to be able
Mm-hmm.
to show your movie because they're going to say, no, we're going to do Avatar because we know that's going to make us a lot of money. And we have a lot more confidence in an Avatar sequel than a Shazam sequel. And that's no shade on Shazam. I love that movie. But if we're looking at where the box office was, it was solid. It was not Avatar. And so,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
Shazam, Fury of the Gods needed to move the hell out of the way of Avatar.
yes.
All
And
of
let
that
me chime in
said,
real quick. Let me.
oh, yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
I just wanted to chime in because David Sandberg, the director of Shazam and Shazam Fury of the Gods, he did tweet out his reaction. So I just thought while we were talking about Shazam 2, I wanted to
Yeah.
throw this in there. He did says, "While I'm an impatient bastard who wants people to see it as soon as possible, the film will be fully done in just a few weeks. The move makes sense since Avatar was taking all of those IMAX and PLF screens. Fury of the Gods is a big movie and should be seen big. And hey, it's still 3 months earlier than our first release date.
There
So
you go.
bless him for being a good sport, and fair enough."
And he also knows it's the best thing for his movie. 100%.
Yeah,
I mean, the
yeah.
only thing they could try to do, because the movie's going to be finished in a few weeks, they could try to move it up, but then it's very close to Black Adam. And then you're spending too much money on marketing at that point, apparently, for Warner Brothers Discovery. But also, you have other competitive concerns as well. Black Adam in October, but that's followed by what should be a gigantic Marvel movie in Black Panther Wakanda Forever in November. So I understand Shazam needed to move back. Totally makes all the sense in the world. Why that domino has to knock Aquaman back a whole 9 additional months, that's the part that I'm having trouble reconciling.
Mhm.
Aquaman was an absolute blast in 2018. It is crazy to think that by the time we get to Lost Kingdom that it's going to have been 5 years since the
Right?
first movie.
5.
And I know we've had some
Crazy.
things like Shazam will be 4 years, right? 2019 to 2023. And I know that Black Panther, 4.5 years from 2018
Huh?
to
Wow, yeah.
2022. A lot of movies are in this position right now for various factors, some things unique to them and their circumstances, obviously. Other things as a result of what everybody's been dealing with the pandemic, which shut down production for several months and made a lot of things very slow to come back. And of course, you have movies that even when they were done and in the can, they couldn't come out because nobody believed that they were going to make any money and they had to wait till more theaters were open and more people were willing to go. All of those things, all of those economic realities that we are aware of that have created more distance between certain movies and their sequel. So I understand all of that. And I don't really want to penalize, and I don't think audiences will penalize Aquaman on that front. But I still feel like Aquaman, I know the first movie made big money in December. And so maybe that's where they feel like, let's just put it back where it made a bunch of money and that will be the best thing for the movie. Okay. I understand that. I also think Aquaman would do crazy money in the summer, and I know that puts it in
Mm-hmm.
Flash territory. And there's other things that you have to consider there, but also maybe pump the brakes on the Flash and move that one until you know what you want to do with it. So I think those are the things that I wish they were considering more. And look, Aquaman's going to be done and in the can. So if they want to move it up to summer because they feel like they have to, because Flash needs to go away for some reason, or for the reasons that many of us would anticipate, then I guess it could still work out. But I don't know. I don't like I don't like the reasoning behind it. It's one thing if they say everybody loved Aquaman at Christmas and they will again. That's why we're doing it. We believe that
Mm-hmm.
that's the best time for an Aquaman movie to come out because it worked the first time. Okay. But if it's we need to spread this out because we can't afford the marketing of these massive movies, I don't like that being the rationale. And that makes me worried about whether or not we will continue to see, if we even get to see 4 DC movies in 2023. It makes me feel like we won't continue to do that. It makes me feel like David Zaslav's approach might be our 10-year plan is to have 2 movies a year, maybe 3, and that's it, because that's where we feel like we're getting the right cash flow for our marketing spend and the return on our investment at the box office, which I could understand that logic. It doesn't, but is this the kind of thing you get excited about as fans? Like, I know that we talk about this stuff a lot from a business perspective, and I love talking about the business stuff. I really do, because I'm weird and dorky like that. But that's not my favorite thing to talk about. I'd much rather just talk about movies and shows about the characters and stories that we all love. I want to be talking about that a lot more than I want to be playing fantasy studio executive, which we do all the time in our message thread with
Oh,
Robert. And then,
oh man.
of
I
course, get
no,
to
dude.
here on
I
the
only
podcast.
follow uh really smart and seasoned studio executives on Twitter because apparently every podcaster is an expert at this.
That's true. That
We
is
all know we all know what they should do.
yeah, absolutely.
We don't all agree, but we all know what they should do.
Exactly. We all know what they should do, and we all think we're right. Or
Yeah,
we all know
yeah,
we're right.
yeah. But I agree with you. Is that like, yeah, I mean, I just want to talk about the movies. And you know what? Again, if once everything shakes out, if that is how it shakes out, 2 or 3 movies a year, I'll even be okay with that. Then it's just right
Sure.
now the growing pains is very it's
Mhm.
painful and it's annoying and it's stressful and it's not usually good news. And to me, what this felt like kicking Aquaman down the road so far, to me, what
Right.
it felt like was they were just trying to buy themselves time as they're like, oh, this is a movie that's already wrapped. It's already done.
Right.
And they're sort of filling a hole while they get their shit together because not much else is ready to go into production because they're changing everything.
Right.
And so it almost feels like they're just trying to buy time with the stuff that's already in the queue while they figure everything else out. And I can kind of understand that rationale. But again, it also seems a bit extreme that, to your point, it's going to be 5 years between films. And I do agree with you. I mean, it would have made more sense to bump this to June and then bump the Flash or whatever. Because again, like the Flash and Blue Beetle both feel like question marks to me at this point.
Mhm.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope we get all 4. And I hope I love all 4. But, right now is just not a time of great confidence in getting what we're supposed to be getting. So I'm sort of just taking them one by one as they come. But Aquaman and Lost Kingdom is arguably my most anticipated because of how much I love the original film. And much like David Sandberg, James Wan did publicly come out and support this. Um, he did say Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is moving to Christmas Day 2023. I'm a bit superstitious and I love that it's a December release like the first one. Here's a
Mhm.
small glimpse of some artwork into the big epic world building we're creating, and I need the time to do it right. These images barely scratch the surface of the movie, haven't even showed the weird and wonderful characters and creatures of this world yet. I can't wait to show, but you have to wait just a little bit longer. And so he did share, I think it was like 10 pieces of concept art that are absolutely stunning. Honestly, they're very in line with the first film, but colorful and beautiful and comic booky and awesome. So it was nice to get this. I just saw these today, and I saw them late today because I was not paying attention to social media. But the artwork is gorgeous, and it's nice of James Wan to just roll with it. And I do understand again some of the, hey man, December worked the first time, but I just don't think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I don't think that's really what motivated it. I think it's about a lot of other things, and I agree with. I think it's a great point that you made, though, of we've got to spread out the inventory that we have because we don't yet know when we're going to have more, and
Yeah,
we don't know
yeah.
how we want to go about refilling this pipeline. So let's slow our roll here on this, and that's actually where I do have that concern, right? As you mentioned with Robert, like, yeah, 4 movies next year, just like we were supposed to have 4 this year. Doesn't mean it's gonna happen, and that's where you do just wonder, okay, which of these 4 DC movies currently slated for 2023 gets the boot into 2024
Mm,
because they still don't have enough things in production, and they wanna make sure they have a big DC summer tentpole for 2024. I could very easily see Aquaman getting moved back again. I certainly hope that I want to punch myself for speaking it into existence because I do not want that to happen whatsoever. But at this point, and I know there's probably because it always cracks me up because you are as positive gets, in while still remaining rational in the way things go with DC and analyzing it and expressing your own opinions on it. And there's still people who are going to be mad at you. I'm very accustomed. You're probably accustomed to it by now. I've long been accustomed to DC fans being mad at me, but um, for anybody who's angry, like why don't they just trust what's happening right now? How can you? I mean, if you can, great, and I love that you can be such a trusting person, and that's lovely. But the way things are going right now, it's hard to put stock in any of what's being said right now actually playing out the way that we've been told. There might be some things where, for financial reasons, I can bet that it's going to happen, like the Batman 2. But
mm.
for a lot of other things, it's all bets are off. Now, they've spent so much money on Aquaman, they're not going to bury that movie. That movie is going to see the light of day.
Oh, I'm
But
sure. And also, again, because Zaslav does prioritize box office,
yeah,
first movie made $1 billion.
sure did.
The sequel's a safe bet, right? That's why Joker 2 got pushed forward, right? And
Yep.
apparently had huge raises for everyone involved because first one made $1 billion. So yeah, I'm not worried that Aquaman 2 is not coming out, but anyway, sorry, continue.
Well, no, but you do have to worry about the way the rest of the audience receives it, right? And I know
Hmm.
ultimately I care about how I feel about a movie, but I also know because this is a business and these things do need to make money, other people got to be into it too. Can't just be us, right? It can't just
Hmm.
be us who podcast about this stuff, and it can't just be the people who listen to podcasts about this stuff. Most of the people who watch these movies have never heard of any of the podcasts you and I have ever done, right? And that's just the reality of it.
Well, that's just a
And
shame.
yeah, it is. It's it's their loss for sure. But I say that to just point out that look, it's a massive audience that has to care about these things. And 5 years, if you can help it, I'd say try to avoid it. Some
Hmm.
things, some movies were forced to for various reasons and have these delays, but you don't have to have Aquaman set out 5 years after. And you just want to make sure the audience still cares that they haven't moved on,
Yeah.
because audiences do move on to things. Sometimes you wait too long, and I know Top Gun just had a sequel after almost like 40 years, and it's the biggest thing ever, right? Okay, that's not the rule. That's the exception that proves it. And so, and I know 5 years is nowhere close to 40, but
Well,
I still,
but here's the thing: is to your point though, there is striking while the iron's hot. There's
right.
like this. It's like a very sweet spot of essentially 3 years between installments, and if it's
Hmm.
not 3 years, it's got to be 20 years
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
in between there is it's been too long for them to still care, but not long enough for them to be nostalgic.
Exactly. You have to have momentum or nostalgia. You got to
Yeah,
have one or the other. And
yeah.
Aquaman is moving itself into a position where it may end up with, it may not end up with either one of those things. But I still think there's going to be a big audience for this movie. If it's bigger and better than the first one was, then there's going to be an audience that finds it, even if it doesn't make quite as much money as the first one did. It's still going to make a lot of money, and it's still going to do well enough to, if everybody wants to make a third one, they can. But then we have to also figure out, how does all of this stuff factor into the 10-year plan? Because it seems like this should be a brand new thing of interconnected DC movies, but they've kind of been stuck in this because we've been on this cycle now as we said, everybody comes in with their 10-year plans and never has an opportunity or earns the opportunity to see it through all the way. And so we've had everybody wanting interconnected DC movies like the MCU. Then we've had more recently the leadership that is more about just let the filmmakers do whatever they want to do. And if we can connect things, great. And if we don't, who cares? And I've been fine with that approach. But now it definitely seems like they want the interconnected MCU of it all. But they're still doing kind of the same thing the last regime did. Whatever's making money gets to keep going. And then everything else we'll try to use to try and build a universe out of this. But the Batman is decidedly not interested in being a part of a larger DCU, maybe a larger Batman universe, a larger Gotham universe, sure, but it's not necessarily interested in mixing up with Superman and other things like that. So I still wonder that they're going to end up in the same spot where they can't really move forward because it's always in transition and they never get to find a way to get out of transition to really begin a new plan in earnest and really try to see it through. It just seems like half measure after half measure. But I'm not calling them out to say I know the answer and what they're doing is wrong, because it is hard. I don't know how you say no to a sequel for the Batman. You got to do it. I don't know how you say no to sequels for Aquaman. You got to do it. But at the same time, if you want to have these interconnected movies, then you kind of got to start having interconnected movies and make the movies connect each other.
Yeah. Hold that thought, because I have a question for you about that. But I just want to go back real quick to the conversation about the inventory that they have to use, because it's something that I have not heard anyone talk about or acknowledge. Is, think of this: the movies that have already been shot are the ones that are, that we're talking about, right? Essentially everything through Aquaman 2 now. So Black Adam, Shazam 2, The Flash, Blue Beetle, Aquaman 2, right? These are the ones we're talking about. These are the ones that have been shot and they're all in post-production. The only DC movie right now moving forward that is not one of those is Joker 2.
Right.
The Batman 2 is in development. Wonder Woman 3 is in development, question mark. Like they say it is, but it seems very quiet. But there is nothing ready to go into production after what has already been made right now. So it is going to leave a hole. And Joker 2 can't fill that hole on its own. So that's something, is like, they've got to get their act together, because there's just right now we're in a kind of a stopgap. So that's crazy when you think about it that way, is that there's nothing else in the pipeline after this. And then to go back to the question about the interconnectivity of the universe, and sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And I kind of appreciate how it is sort of, like it's a little more loosey-goosey than the MCU. That doesn't bother me as much, but we know that Aquaman 2, Michael Keaton shot a cameo. And then just a few weeks ago, Ben Affleck shot a cameo, because it sounds like they replaced the Michael Keaton cameo with a Ben Affleck cameo because of the shift in the release dates. And now it seems like The Flash comes out first again. And so this has led people to the question of, so what are they going to do? Are they going to keep the Ben cameo? Are they going to go back to the Keaton cameo? What's going to happen? And so I wanted to get your take on that. I mean, I think the answer is they got 15 months to figure it out. Once they figure out what the hell their 10-year plan is. My guess is they got both in the can, and they got to figure out the rest of the plan, and they know which one they're going to use. But what do you think?
I think the easiest answer is use them both. It's Keaton and Affleck. Just do it. Figure out a way to make it make sense that you use both of those cameos. I don't know. I mean, I think the interconnectivity question, it's such a, as I was saying before, it's such a difficult thing. It's sort of which one they should use better. I guess the more obvious answer is which one actually fits the rest of the movie better, because what matters most is Aquaman 2. And so which cameo actually fits the story of that one better? Because it's hard to know right now. And how could they know? Because they're only just now, like they don't have, well, here I am helping with the segues again. They don't firmly have the boss of DC in place yet, of who actually has to come up with and execute this 10-year plan. Because David Zaslav doesn't actually have the plan. What he has is the desire for there to be a 10-year plan for DC. He doesn't actually have it. That's why he has to hire somebody to get it. And that's not a knock on David Zaslav. That's not his job. His
Yeah,
job is
yeah,
to
yeah.
find somebody to have that plan. It wasn't Bob Iger's and it's not Bob Chapek's job to run the MCU. That's Kevin Feige's job. So that's who DC has to find. But until you have that person, you don't know what they want after Aquaman 2 and The Flash and everything else.
Mhm.
So until you know what that is, what those things mean for the future is kind of irrelevant. Now, before they will have a boss of DC in place by the time these movies come out, and maybe that will inform whatever decisions they made of which cameos they keep, if at all, or maybe they keep both just for funsies because they're not actually going to follow on any of these threads anyway. They're going to start something else and go from there. I think that's the stuff that they can go with. I mean, I think the easiest answer in my mind, I mean, the Flash should be this, right? It's Flashpoint multiverse type of stuff, and it's supposed to allow really anything, right? It's supposed to allow. I mean, obviously everybody knows the problems going on with that movie, but when you think about what it was supposed to set up, in theory, it should set up the ability for them to go do anything. But that's where it
Mhm.
was great that the Flash was coming out after Aquaman, because then whatever
Mhm.
happens in Aquaman, the Flash was going to provide the reset. And so it's kind of weird to have Aquaman come out with Flash. That's why if you're going to do the domino effect, keep Aquaman ahead of the Flash and move the Flash back. Now they know what's actually happening in these movies, so that gives them the advantage over us, just talking about this stuff in theory. But yeah, I don't. It's hard to say what decisions they should make based on the future because they don't know what that future is because they don't yet know who's in charge.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's why someone was asking me on that on Twitter today of, oh, does this mean? And I'm like, no, I don't think they know. And now they've got both in the can, and they can figure it out. They've got, and Lord knows they got time to figure it out. So I just don't think there is an answer yet. I just think what muddied the waters is in the last like 24 hours. Jason Momoa did a quick interview, and they asked him about working with Ben again, and he said, yeah, Ben's back. And people, I think, took that to mean that, oh, he's back for good. And I was like, no, I think he meant he's back in Aquaman too. I think that's what he meant. Um, but I think again that muddied the waters a bit. But I don't think that a decision has been made. And to your point, it's not going to be made until they actually start mapping out what their 10-year plan is and what does that mean for an interconnected universe? What does that mean for Batman in the interconnected universe? Because to your point, the Batman, that's its own universe. Like that is just not going to cross over with any additional superheroes. And so Hamada had his plan, which it sounded like it was Keaton is an older seasoned Batman and he will be in the shared universe films, and then
Right.
Pattinson is the young one and he's in his own universe. And I actually thought that was a pretty creative solution. I know not every fan agrees, but I thought it was pretty creative. But God, anything is up in the air now because the regime is changing and we're going to have a new DC boss. And as of today, it seems like we have a name for a very strong possibility of who that boss could be. It is a producer named Dan Lin, a name I had never heard before today, but he has a pretty impressive and extensive resume. He was an executive. He is now a producer. He produced the remake of Aladdin, the Lego movie, actually all the Lego movies, the It movies. And he went back as far as producing 10,000 BC, not the best movie, but okay. But he also worked on The Departed, and he has a lot of credentials and a lot of variety in his resume. Um, and according to the Hollywood Reporter and Variety and all the trades, it seems like he is a very likely candidate. And it does sound, according to the Hollywood Reporter, that the talks are in place. And so it seems like this is just something that is very, very possible and even probable. So again, not coming in with a lot of knowledge of his work, his resume gives me some hope that maybe this could be sort of a quiet, little black sheep who I'd never heard of and could come in and actually do a great job. But how are you feeling about the possibility of Dan Lin becoming the head of DC Films?
Well, there was a time when nobody knew who Kevin Feige was, and everybody pronounced his name Feige because they didn't know how it was pronounced. So
True, true.
people come from wherever they come from, and obviously Dan Lin is a seasoned pro. So you look at his resume, you look at his IMDb, and you see the qualifications that are there. Does that translate to DC success? Not necessarily, but you got to start somewhere. And his start, it's not just a start. He's had a very successful career already.
And a
Put it
long
this
one
way,
too. Like, he doesn't
yeah,
look that old, but he has been working in the industry for a lot of years.
yeah.
So
Well, look, if he gets the
respect.
job, and he fails, he's already had a successful career to go off of before whatever
Yeah.
happens with DC. So he can really only add to his resume with this if he is indeed the one who gets the job. And I know there's varying reports out there. Like Deadline had it originally, and they're saying in the mix, and that's what Variety is saying. Hollywood Reporter kind of characterizes it more like he's the front runner. I don't really know where that's at, and whether or not Dan Lin is going to be the right person. I have no idea. I mean, there's not really a name that you could give me that I would say this is who that person is supposed to be, right? For a long time, a lot of fans thought it was Jeff Johns, and then
Hmm.
it wasn't. And so I think that it's hard to say until somebody actually gets to do the job, because this is such a unique job. There's only one Kevin Feige and there's only one MCU because there's only been one guy who could run it. Does that mean there's really nobody else on the planet who's capable of doing it? No, I don't think so. I think there are other really smart creative producers who could lead a shared cinematic universe. I'm a little surprised that we didn't see, and maybe it all happened and people just quietly said no. I am a little surprised that, seeing as how David Zaslav hired, well, former Warner president and then former Disney Studios president Alan Horn to come in and be a consultant to help find slash headhunt for somebody to come in and lead DC. I'm really surprised that Alan Horn either didn't try to or wasn't able to tempt anybody from Marvel Studios, because they were never going to get Kevin Feige. But there have been some pretty seasoned producers who've been working with and been successful in their own right, and also learning from Kevin Feige over the past several years, that I'm kind of surprised they didn't want to recruit one of those guys. If you want the MCU, then get one of the people who's helped run it, whether that's a Nate Moore or a Trin Tran, a Steven Broussard, or Brad Winderbaum. But I also understand how we talk about difficulties recruiting. Might be tough to recruit some of those guys when they just watched you delete a movie. So
Mm,
it might
mm.
be, maybe they don't get their first choice. And I don't know, maybe Dan Lin was, and that's fine. This
Well,
is just
and
my long.
according to the Hollywood Reporter, he was championed by Alan Horn, which also gives me some
Great.
confidence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. One thing, Alan Horn is many things, and I mean successful. One of them. Also been a pretty good judge of talent, and also, I mean, not that he's the one who discovered Kevin Feige. He was already running it when Disney bought Marvel Studios, but Alan Horn did a good job of making sure that he removed obstacles so that Kevin Feige could be and as successful as he could be, and allow Marvel Studios to be as successful as they could be. And I kind of hope that Alan Horn, as a consultant, one of the things that he should be telling everybody else is, if we tap this guy to do it and we say he's the guy, we got to let him be the guy. We got to shut
Hmm.
up and we got to
Hmm.
let him be the guy, because that's really what you need. One of the best things that Disney has done since they bought Marvel is largely left Marvel Studios alone. They've been there to support that engine over there and been a supportive partner. And obviously, the Disney marketing machine has been massive for Marvel Studios. But from a creative standpoint, it's not to say that Bob Iger or Alan Horn never gave a helpful note on any of these movies. I'm sure that they did. But for the most part, it's just, these people are doing this successfully. We're going to let them continue to do that. With Dan Lin, obviously, he doesn't have that track record specific to DC, but he does have his own successful track record. So if you believe that this is the right person to lead it, then you've got to let him lead it. What I will say about Dan Lin that brings us back to this idea of an interconnected universe while still making things that are not connected. I believe, it wasn't Dan Lin involved in Justice League Mortal all those
Yeah,
years
I
ago
was
that
actually
didn't
just
get
about
made.
to bring that up. Yeah, he apparently
So
oversaw
r-
that.
remember at the time, and oh boy, should we? Let's just skip over who was supposed to play Batman in that one. So we have
Oh
uh,
man.
So anyway, the point though is that that movie was being developed before The Dark Knight even came out, and it was supposed to come. It wasn't originally supposed to come out like 2009, and a lot of
I think
things
so.
happened and
Yeah.
impacted that movie. Writer's strike being one of those things, and then of course there's the belief that eventually Nolan was able to get his way, and he got to have the only Batman for a while. But just remember what the plan was at the time. There was going to be a Batman that was part of a shared thing with the Justice League. Meanwhile, Nolan was going to have his gritty, grounded in realism Batman. Now, Matt Reeves will probably get to have his gritty, grounded Batman and stick with that with Robert Pattinson and bring in whatever bat based elements he wants to add to it. But there will probably be another Batman that is part of the shared universe. And so there will be these things that get to be separate. Joker will get
Hmm.
to be
Hmm.
separate for as long as Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips want to keep making Joker movies. And I don't know that they're going to want to make a third one after they do this second one. But Matt Reeves, I think he's got at least two more Batman movies that he wants to make and probably some more series than just the Penguin. I think he'll get to do that as long as they remain as successful as the first one was. I think he'll get to do that. Meanwhile, there will be another Batman that is part of a shared universe. And I do think there will be another Superman. Do I think that's going to be Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, Michael Keaton? No, I do not. And I don't necessarily think that's the right way to go about it. Because if you want to have a 10-year plan, Michael Keaton is not your 10-year plan. Ben Affleck, not your 10-year plan. And it's not because those guys wouldn't be good enough to do it for 10 more years. It's just because I don't think either one of them would be interested in doing it for 10 more years. I think Ben Affleck has been happy to have these little one-offs for these little cameos,
Well,
but I
yeah,
don't think he
that
wants
are
to put
1 day a piece, and that's just is
exactly.
I love that Ben is such a good sport that he'll come back for a day or two to shoot a cameo, but that is different than committing to a whole nother Batman film or a Justice League film.
Yeah, and or a whole other interconnected 10-year story
Yeah,
of
yeah,
DC movies. And I think they will want a Batman who is going to do that. And so I think that's probably a new guy. If it's going to be any former Batman to come in and do that, it's Christian Bale if they can somehow convince him to do it. But I don't think that
hmm
would happen either. I think
yeah,
it's going to be a brand new person. So you will have the interconnected track of DC in theory, based on just if Dan Lin is the person and knowing that he was already involved in this and comfortable with this idea of having a Batman that was commingling with other superheroes while there was the more quote unquote realistic version of Batman in his own trilogy, if that's already a setup that he was comfortable with, then why? And he never actually got to see it to fruition. Why wouldn't he try now when he actually has even more time to build it up with David Zaslav craving a 10-year plan? So, yeah, it's a new Batman who's part of an interconnected DC universe that leads to Justice League movies and all of that. Meanwhile, Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves get to continue playing in their version of Gotham. So, maybe we are headed towards the best of both worlds when it comes to Batman in movies.
yeah, and I'm okay with that. I'm all for it. I think that's a great way to do it. More Batman is is more happy for me. And I like the idea of being able to have one, and people get it, and people are smart, and so let Reeves and Pattinson do their version, and then have one that can cross over. I'm okay with that, but I agree with you. It'll probably be someone new, but I'm totally open to that. The other thing that I thought was interesting about this, though, is that, if Dan Lin gets the gig, and again, right now, I'm actually hopeful. Like, it's not a name that any of us were thinking about, but now that it's up and I'm reading about him, he also he also produced the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes films. So that's another, notable credit there. But if he gets this gig, he reports directly to Zaslav. He does not
Mhm.
report up through WB Pictures Group, which I think is also interesting, but again shows that Zaslav, good or bad, or good and bad, depending on how you feel about the things he's been doing, he does prioritize DC, that he would want the head of DC reporting directly to him.
That could be good or bad.
I mean, agreed, but it's
You might,
interesting that
yeah,
he would.
yeah. I think it definitely speaks to his level of attention,
Yeah,
his
yeah.
prioritization of DC. That's the positive. I don't know what kind of notes David Zaslav gives on creative projects,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And given the way he's prioritized other things, and I don't know with David Zaslav, right? It's an unknown. I'm not happy with some of the decisions that he's made at the start of his tenure. So it does create some trust issues for sure. But if he really is serious about DC and is there to support and lift up Dan Lin or whoever gets this job, if it's not Dan Lin, great. But sometimes it can be helpful for somebody who's the creative producer, because that's kind of who this person has to be. And I think that's what a lot of people have misunderstood about Kevin Feige's job over the years is I know, well, look, we literally see it every time he shows up somewhere. He wears a lot of hats, right? And so
Mhm.
figuratively and literally, the guy wears a lot of hats. And so is he the president of Marvel Studios? Yes. Does he really view himself, carry himself as a studio executive? In some aspects when the situation calls for it, sure. But first and foremost, he's a creative producer. He is a storyteller. And so if that is also Dan Lin, then you want to be able to make sure that there's somebody who's going to let Dan Lin do his job. So if David Zaslav is willing to do that and just support Dan Lin or whoever gets the job, great. If that's not, and there's going to be too much meddling, then that's when you kind of actually wish there was somebody in between
To
Dan
help
Lin and
protect
David
him.
Zaslav to kind
Yeah.
of be a little bit of a
Be the
buffer.
buffer. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you need that. Will they need that in this scenario? I don't know enough about these two guys and how they would get along to be able to really say whether or not that would be necessary in this instance. It's just to say it could go either way, but that's why my, I I'll go with the creativity part of it first. So if Dan Lin is the person you're bringing in to run it, then I'll just reiterate that point. You got to let him do the job. Don't hire anybody to come in and do this job and not be prepared to trust them. Let them go to work and I mean really let them go to work, and you're not even going to be able to look up and see how they were doing for a couple years. You're really going to have to let them have that opportunity, because I don't even know if anybody's really had that opportunity. It seems like everybody
No,
who's
they
come in to
haven't.
run the show has
Yeah.
always had to do so with someone else looking over their shoulder. And I mean, there's always some of that to some extent in the industry. It is what it is. And I'm not naive to that. But I also don't, I think there can be more autonomy offered for someone in this position than we have seen from Warner Brothers in the past. And I know it's possible because it's happening not far from where that Warner lot is over at the Disney lot in Burbank. So it can and does happen.
Well, and I think that goes back to the point we made at the very beginning about, you know, we've seen the change of leadership for DC happen again 5 times in the last 10 years. Like I've honestly lost track, because at the first sign of trouble, there's meddling, there's changes, and they shift course. And so no one has been given the autonomy or the trust to actually see anything through. And to your point, this is what we need to give to Dan Lin or whoever gets the job. And you're right, we don't know if Zaslav will do that or not. And that is a point of concern. And hopefully he will. Hopefully he believes in this 10-year plan and he's going to believe in whoever he hires to do this and let the guy do it, or girl. But we just don't want another situation where as soon as something, looks a little off, then everybody's fingers start getting in the pie and then we're back to square one.
Yeah, I think that's where that might be my I don't is it a fear or an expectation? Maybe a little bit of both. I just don't want to be back in this spot again. I don't want to go through
Yeah. Yeah.
another 2 or 3 year cycle of we're starting it up and we're going to do this, and then it doesn't work out and people abandon things too quickly. There's no nobody sticks with anything. It's just this isn't immediately we haven't immediately put out Avengers Endgame, so this isn't working. So
Yeah.
there has to be some patience with it, and that's on the studio side. And yes, that's us as fans. So I will say this much: if Dan Lin gets the job or whoever it is, I will do what I hope that Zaslav and anybody else at Warner Brothers Discovery is going to do. I'm prepared to support them. I am
Hmm.
prepared
Hmm.
to approach this with an open mind and be ready to see what they show me, and knowing that it's going to take a while, knowing
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Dan Lin could start tomorrow. And guess what? We got to go see, we still have to have all these other movies come out that are already in the pipeline. And that's not showing us what Dan Lin's leadership is. We won't start seeing that until we see the movies that have gone into production under his tenure. And obviously, that's going to be a while. We're looking at movies that, best case scenario, we start seeing in 2024, but more likely 2024, late 2024 and into 2025.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. And I, you know, again, reading up on Dan Lin, I actually am like, I am encouraged by this choice if this is what happens. I'm, like you said, ready to support him. And for the amount of doubt I have had based on what Zaslav has been doing since he joined, because again, to me, it seems like every decision that he has made since day one has all been about the bottom line. It's all been about cost cutting and finding savings and finding revenue. And I get that's part of his job, but if that's how he makes every decision, I'm not super encouraged. But if he is essentially just he's making the hard decisions now to clean the board so they can build from a stronger foundation, I am willing to go with that because we all want DC to be in a strong, steady place that we can all feel good about. So if a year from now Dan Lin takes the gig or whoever takes the gig and they have had the time and they've mapped out a plan and we know what that plan is and we know what the slate is and some of these movies have started going in to production and we've got talent attached and we I want that to be the case because I don't want to be the one here being pessimistic about it. You know, I don't like that. I want to be excited. And so if that's what this gets us to, then I will be happy to celebrate that when that time comes. It's just right now we're going through those growing pains and it doesn't feel good because it seems like every bit of good news comes with bad news. And hopefully that will come to an end and then they can start rebuilding. And then I can be happy again.
Yeah, I really just hope that this is the painful part. This is
Right.
the
Right.
painful part of the transition. I still won't agree with shelving Batgirl, but any in any event, I hope that we go through this and then we get out on the other side of it. And what happens on the other side of it is the possibility, but possibility that actually get to develop into real things because they're led by somebody who is qualified, capable, and also given the trust to be able to go in and do their job. Not that that makes it easy, not that that guarantees their success, but you can guarantee they won't be successful if you hire somebody and don't never trust them to do the work in the first place. So,
Mhm.
so I know it's not official yet, and whether it's in the mix, front runner, whatever. If that person is Dan Lin, I'm right there behind him. If it's somebody else, right there behind them instead, and really hoping that they get the opportunity. And David Zaslav supports them. Okay, had to go through the painful part with the transition. You made the cuts that you had to make for whatever reason you felt like you had to make them. But DC, as you've said, is your priority. You want a 10-year plan. You want it to be something that is as big and beloved and all of these things as the MCU. Okay, great. Now I want you to let the person that you've hired to do this go out and earn that love and earn that franchise being the biggest thing in the world. Because if you found the right person, then you should try. If you believe you found the right person, then you should trust them to go do it and go prove you right and give them the time, the space, the patience, and yes, the money to do it.
Here, here. That's a good a place as any to end it. I'm with you, and we will see what the future will bring. And for now, we will keep our eyes on
Yeah, looking forward to watching Dan Lin's movies on Netflix.
it. Oh man.
That was a cheap shot. Those movies will be on HBO Max, I hope.
I mean, but I mean, DC fans, we get the brunt of so many jokes like that, and this situation is not helping them.
No, it's not. But look,
Like I literally just tweeted out like the concept art from Aquaman 2 and I got a response that was like, "Hey, nice to see it before the movie gets canceled." And I'm like, "Ah, here we go."
yeah.
Uh,
It's, we've been through it. We've gotten our hopes up. We've seen them dashed, and we've gone through that cycle over and over again. And it doesn't even matter which side of DC fandom you're on. Like, we've all taken our turns being disappointed, whether you were a big fan of the Snyderverse or you weren't. And we've all been through this cycle in our own way. Maybe we were at different ends of that cycle at different points in time, but I think we can all relate to this idea of the stops, the starts, the
mm,
restarts, all of these things being such an issue, and having what looks like another one. And this is a particularly painful moment in time compared to other things, because we've never seen things just completely go away like we've
yeah.
seen over these past few weeks. And so that's new for us, and that adds, extra layers to the hurt, to the frustration, to the impatience. All of those feelings are completely valid and fair. And I know it's a hard time to be optimistic, because I'm having a hard time being optimistic. But one of the things that we, or some of the things we've always wanted, is for DC to be a real priority within the Warner Brothers landscape. It looks like it is. How David Zaslav goes about that, yes, that's unknown, but at least the level of priority seems to be clear. And we've known that we need leadership within there. And that's not to take anything away from Walter Hamada, who I think actually has done a good job over the past few years, and with the situation that he inherited. But if he's not the guy that they feel is the person to execute what they want with this 10-year vision, and they believe that that's Dan Lin or somebody else, okay, make that choice and back it up. And as a fan, I'll be hopeful about that. I'll be hopeful that they have chosen a leader for this to actually execute a vision for the next decade's worth of DC movies. And I'll be ready to believe that they've chosen the right person, unless or until it seems like they don't have the right person. And maybe we end up back where we started. But I'm ready to feel like we're turning a corner. And I know it's been a very tricky corner this time around, but I don't know. I do have perhaps some unearned optimism for where this could go if they have the right leadership in place.
Yeah. No, and I'm with you on that. And that is sort of the thing that I've been holding up and reminding myself when the bad news comes of like, but there is a world where we have this and it might take some time to get there, but a year from now, if we are there, it's all going to be worth it. And I do hope for the same. And you're right, with the right leadership and the right support and the right prioritization, we can get there. And that's, I think, what we all hope for in the end.
Yep,
So
agreed.
we will see how it goes, but it's been fun going through all of this with you and chatting through it. And I appreciate you making the time. It's always good to have you back.
I really appreciate being back. I think we needed to get this out, right? Like, I
Yeah,
think there's
yeah. It
some
does feel therapeutic, doesn't it?
It was. Yeah, like, it was nice to rant a little bit, but then also, like, it really does come from love. And I know it doesn't seem like that all the time, certainly not with my delivery. But it really is. Like, it's a deeply held passion, a long held passion for these characters and these stories. And I believe in them very much. I know you certainly do. And I know everybody listening, like, we believe in this stuff. We love this stuff. Like, we see the value in it where maybe others don't. And so I think that's where a lot of this frustration comes from. But that's also where the hope stays alive, is knowing that it's all there, and it's just up to, having the right person come in to unlock it. And so it's been really fun being back on Holy BatCast. So thank you very much, Andy, for having me.
It is always a pleasure. Well, if people want to keep up with you when you're talking about other things, tell them where they can do that.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Mr. Sean Gerber, Sean spelled Sean, and then the last name just like the baby food. Or yeah, if you like that other superhero universe that this one's hoping they could be a little more like, yeah, I talk about the MCU all the time on MCU Fan Show, so you can check that out wherever you get your podcasts, and follow Instagram and Twitter at MCU Fan Show.
Awesome. I also wanted to just give you a chance to talk about DC again.
I love talking about DC. I know people don't think about that because I don't get to do it as much as
Not
as
like you
much as
used to. You used to be able to do it so much more often, and I miss it,
I know.
honestly.
And then, eventually just got busier and, people are like, well, what happened to, there was a DC fan show for like 5 whole minutes 2 years ago. And, truth is, like, I started that podcast ready to go. And then other work opportunities came up and just took away all of that time, opportunities that I just could not say no to. So it's been a good and bad thing to not have as much time. And, because of other things going on career wise, I've been able to I've had to scratch and claw to preserve what little podcasting time I have left to keep MCU Fan Show going, and Fan Show Plus for premium subscribers. I've been keeping those going, but that's as much time as I have now for my podcasting. So I love to be able to talk about DC, but it's going to have to be in a guest role like this, which is why just adds to my appreciation for you having me to give me this outlet to
Good.
express my DC love and my fandom. It's still there. It's time is the issue, not my passion for it.
Of course, of course. Well, know that the door is always open. It's an open invitation.
Oh
So
no, we are
you're
going to
always
be
welcome.
tracking this progress. So
Okay,
I hope to be invited back as we check in on how things are going.
good. It sounds like a plan. All right, so everybody out there, go check out Sean online and check out the MCU Fan Show. And thank you, as always, for checking out this show. Thanks for listening to Holy BatCast. Please do subscribe or follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And visit holybatcast.com. Find Holy BatCast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. We did not do the Wayne Manor mailbox this time just because we filled the time with just talking about all this craziness. So we'll do that next time. But if you've got something for the Wayne Manor mailbox, which after this episode, I bet you will, you can send all those messages to holybatcast@rf4rm.com. A big thank you, as always, to Gaurav Venkateswar, who created our theme music. His work can be found at gvtunes.com. And don't forget to go to manscaped.com. Do a little shopping, make a purchase. If you are going to make a purchase, please use that promo code BATSCAPED for 20% off and for free shipping. But that'll do it. Thanks so much for joining us. On behalf of Sean, I've been Andy. We'll see you next time. On behalf of Sean and myself, Andy, yeah, you know what I mean. On behalf of Sean and me, this has been Holy BatCast. We'll see you next time. Same bat time, same bat channel. Holy BatCast is not affiliated with Warner Brothers or DC Entertainment. The views and opinions shared by the participants are theirs and theirs alone and do not represent the companies or organizations they happen to work for. And it's also the middle of the night, so emails are gonna have to wait.